Why, hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome to the Chad Prather Show. Good to see you guys on Tuesday afternoon. Actually, I can't see you guys. Let me get over here where I can. Let's see if you guys are in the chat. What do we got? 74, 78, 79, 80 people, 81, 82, 83, 84, get a 5, get a 40, 75, get a 40, 85, get a 1, give it a 9, get a 950. Get on up there. I want to talk to you about some stuff today. It's going to be fun. I'm going to give you a little history lesson. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time if I can get through it and try to make some sense of it. I've been thinking about this stuff, and my head gets all jumbled because I start going back into my little history lessons and the things that I've studied over the years. And it's all a jumbled big salad mess, and I try to put it in some cohesive thought. I'm going to do that for you today. I'm going to talk to you about where it all comes from. Why do we see the attacks on people like Donald Trump? Why do we see the attacks on people like Pete Hegseth? Why, whenever the deep state or the permanent Washington powers that be see someone that is a threat to their empowerment, why do they come after them with guns blazing? I'm going to tell you, because it's happened throughout American history, and you're going to see it firsthand today. Some of you have already heard these stories. Some of you you're going to know more than I do on this topic. But I want to revisit it. I want to rehash it. And at the end of it, some of you are going to call me a conspiracy theorist. But that's okay. I've been called a conspiracy theorist before, because let me tell you where conspiracy theories come from. Are you ready? You got your thinking cap on now? And check those numbers again. Let's see how we're doing. I'm going to talk to you about conspiracy theories. Let's pump those numbers up. Nobody watches this show, do they? That's okay. I'll speak to the masses. I'll start doing this thing under the cover of the night. I'll be like Coast to Coast with George Norrie. I'll tell you ghost stories, but I'll tell you conspiracy theories instead. I got a whole side of me. Conspiracy theories come from the fact that the media and even the history books tell us a little bit of information. They tell us a little bit of the story. And just when it's starting to get juicy and good and like you're going to reveal something, there's going to be that big reveal. Ty is going to move the bus and they're going to see their new house. Instead of doing that, they just snatch the curtain down over everything and they stop talking about it. They quit telling us about Paul Pelosi's attacker in his living room at 2:30 in the morning. They quit telling us about cocaine in the White House. They quit telling us about Fast and Furious. They quit telling us about Epstein's Island. They quit talking about these things that we're interested in. Was Joe Biden truly photoshopped in his Easter family picture? Answer's yes, but they won't talk about that. We don't get confirmation of the things we suspect until it comes out and it's too late. I've said over and over again that conspiracy theories and truth are about 6 weeks apart. But what happens is when they stop telling you the story, you have an information vacuum that forms. And that information vacuum, it just can't exist in nature because vacuums don't exist in nature. Got a hair on my microphone. And so our minds, our imaginations, our questions, our inquisitions, our thoughts, our opinions, our ideas rush to fill the vacuum. Just sucks right into the black hole there. And we start to pool those together on Reddit and chat boards and Facebook posts and Instagram and our reels and our stories and our TikTok. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, we're deep diving into things and we're like, oh, wow, that sort of lines up. That makes sense. Like all these things can't be a coincidence, can they? And the conspiracy comes out and we formulate our theories and we just get to a point where we don't believe anything. But I'm going to give you some real history today. I'm going to give you some stuff today that you haven't thought about. And I'm going to make some connections. And at the end of it, if I've done my job, all of it is going to be clear. All of it is going to make sense to you, and you're going to go, ding, that's why. That's why they go after these guys. So I'm going to expose America's true enemies. They're not just here today. They were here then. They didn't just emerge with George Soros or Bill Gates or you fill in the blank, any, evil villain Bond billionaire. I'm saying they've been here all along. It goes way, way back. And we can go as deep in the weeds as you want to go. We can go way back. I could make a lot of people angry because you know what? There's no sacred cows. If you're really going to dive into the conspiracies, if you're going to dive into the history, you're going to dive into the truth. You got to be willing to barbecue every sacred calf there is. And that leaves no stone unturned, no weed untouched. You got to scour into the mess, the muck, the crap. And you got to talk about all those things that many of us hold near and dear to. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some Freemasons that watch this show. We could talk about that. We're not going to today, but I'm not afraid to. We could talk about the powers of the banks and the powers of the medical and the powers of the courts and the powers of all of the big tyrannies that are out there. And today we're going to get into a number of those things. Before we do, Before we do, I want to remind you about my friends over at Patriot Mobile. They're America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And they love you. They love America. They love our values. They love our Constitution. They love our Bill of Rights. And they're the only Christian conservative wireless provider out there. In fact, the only provider at all for cell service that doesn't send a portion of your bill when you pay it to the progressive movement out there, whether it's Planned Parenthood or murdering babies. They don't do that. No, they're going to support your right to life, your right to free speech, your right to bear arms. They're good folks over there. And not only that, you're not going to worry about some kind of shoddy coverage because they're on the same cell towers as the big three. Why send your money to leftist causes when you can support Patriot Mobile? Go to patriotmobile.com/Chad and sign up. They got a plan that'll fit your budget, fit your family's needs. They can help you switch a number over to your phone. They can get you a new phone. They can, put your old number on a new phone, whatever combination you need to do. And if you use promo code Chad, they'll give you a free month right up front. And if you're a first responder hero or a veteran or active duty military, they'll give you free activation. You can talk to them. Call them on the phone, 972-PATRIOT. You can talk to a 100% U.S.-based customer service team member over there, and they speak your language, and they will help you out. PatriotMobile.com/Chad. I love them. I love them. I love them. They've been good friends for a long, long time. And I'm proud they're still a part of this show. All right. Let's see if we can get through this thing here a little bit. I want to talk to you about, let's start with the education of the masses and the medication of the mind, all right? And I said this morning on Dear America, I said I want to deal with the character of John D. Rockefeller. Let's talk about his legacy, folks. I know we got some free thinkers out there, and I want to dig beneath sort of that polished brass plaque, if you will, of history and just kind of chip away the marble bust of one of those so-called great men, those people of history, the people you don't know much about, but you know the name, you know the Rockefeller name, tycoon, titan, philanthropist, or at least so they say. But I want to remind you guys, behind every gilded act of charity, there's always a motive. People don't just give away billions of dollars or millions of dollars. There's always something that comes back with the charity. They don't just do it altruistically out of the goodness of their heart. Well, in Rockefeller's case, his motive for giving was to be able to have control. And let's start with, because we can start in a number of places, but let's start with his interest in American education. Sounds good, right? In the early 20th century, Rockefeller, he literally poured millions. I want you to imagine the Bill Gates of the day, richest guy in the world. He poured millions into the American educational system, not because he loved little Johnny's curiosity or Sally's creative spark, folks. He wanted, and this was his philosophy, he wanted workers, not thinkers. I want you to remember that phrase. He wanted workers and not thinkers. I was with Party Foul Steve the other day. We were in the car, and I was running through this stuff with him, and I was kind of talking to Steve about this. I said, can you believe that somebody literally publicly, like Rockefeller did, he literally said, I don't want thinkers to come out of our schools. I want workers. I want minds that could follow instructions. I want hands that could punch clocks, and not these souls and brains that question authority. So through let's call it the Department of Education of the day, the General Education Board, which was founded in 1902, Rockefeller helped standardize American education. Does that sound familiar? I mean, it sounds innocent enough, right? But how many times, especially here in Texas with the STAR test, kids get all stressed out and lose their mind because they got to go take that standardized test, whether it's they got to do that every year. The STAR test comes around every year in Texas. Kids, they get freaked out over it. There's no real way to study for that thing. But now we got, SATs and ACTs and all these other things, and we've got standardized testing. Everybody's filled out the Scantron. See where we measure, see where we, fit. And so he's the one who poured the money behind that. It started with him. But what did the standardization really mean when they started? It meant turning education into a conveyor belt. Can somebody say Henry Ford? What he did with the Model T, with the automobile, Rockefeller wanted the Education Board to do that with human minds. Shape them, not to challenge the system, but rather to serve it. And one of his cronies, Frederick T. Gates, one of Rockefeller's closest educational advisors, he said one time, in our dreams, like if we were going to paint the world how we wanted it to be, he said, in our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning. We shall train them to do perfectly the things their fathers and mothers are doing in the homes. Let that sink in. See, this wasn't about enlightenment. Education was not about that. It was about obedience. It was about creating a society where thinking outside the box would get you labeled a lunatic. And while compliance, that was going to earn you what you were rewarded with, your pension and a gold watch at the end of 30 or 40 years. Now, I want to pivot over to medicine. Because Rockefeller also helped create what we now know as modern medicine. And by that, I mean pharmaceutical industrial complex. Say it with me, pharmaceutical industrial complex. So in the early 1900s, this is Rockefeller's doings. In the early 1900s still, the beginning of the 20th century, Rockefeller leveraged his oil empire, that was Standard Oil, to pivot into a new kind of oil, petrochemicals. And with petrochemicals came synthetic drugs. Cheap to make, easy to patent, highly profitable. Does that sound familiar? Well, the thing is now they're not cheap to make, but they're still highly profitable. And there was a problem. America's medical schools, they were doing something different in those days. They were teaching homeopathy. They were teaching herbal remedies. They were teaching holistic healing. In other words, that was competition to the petrochemicals. That was competition to the pharmaceutical industry. They were actually working towards healing people. So guess what Rockefeller did? He funded what's called the Flexner Report of 1910. That was a document that demolished natural medicine and restructured medical education to favor pharmacology. Any school that didn't comply with that, guess what? They got defunded. They got discredited. They got, let's call it with a modern term, they got deplatformed. They got dismantled. And then he poured money into the very medical schools that adopted the new model. So suddenly, doctors were no longer healers, they were prescription pushers. And the cure was no longer the goal. The customer was for life. I'll go into an example here in a minute. Before I do, let me just remind you guys that like cancer wasn't a big deal. Cancer was not a big deal back then. Like you didn't talk about, like today it's a death sentence. Back then they didn't think of it that way. Back then, it got to a point where in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you didn't say the C word. You whispered it, cancer. It's got cancer. And then they started running commercials in the 70s that said, if it hurts, you should probably go to the doctor. If you've got an ailment or a pain, go to the doctor. And they said this in the marketing. They said, it might be cancer. So you got to go. I'll tell you why they started doing that here in just a second. Before we do, let me talk to you about my friends over at American Financing. American Financing, they can help you with your credit card loans. They can help you with all the crazy stuff that you got going on. And people are living off of credit cards right now. I'm going to show you later on why people are living off of credit cards so bad. But those interest rates are just driving you bonkers. I just got off the phone with a debt collector just a moment ago from something I didn't even know existed for $100. They wanted $100 from, I don't even know when it was. And I'm sitting there, I'm dealing with all this. It's a stressful deal. And you got to deal with somebody in Pakistan. You're dealing with all these people. You're trying to figure out how in the world you're going to get out from under all of this nonsense that's out there. Well, let me tell you, my friends over at American Financing can help you. And how they're going to help you is they're going to take the interest, or the equity, I should say, that is in your home, and they can help you close within as little as 10 days. On average, people that are doing... People that are using American Finance are saving like $800 a month. That's a huge cushion. And they might even be able to get you to, miss 2 mortgage payments. That's cool. So they don't work off a commission. They are salaried, so they're not going to upsell you on anything. If you give them a call, they will help you out. And I want you guys to head over to AmericanFinancing.net. That's .net/Chad. And you can get them on the phone over at, hang on a second, let me pull it up here. There it is right there. They open up. Get them on the phone over at, I got to get down to that disclaimer there because I got to read that thing off. You call them at 888-675-4090, 888-675-4090, or visit them, AmericanFinancing.net/Chad. Now, that disclaimer is NMLS 182334. You'd think I'd have that memorized by now, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. Get them on the phone. They will walk you through the process. It will be virtually pain-free. All right, are you guys down with it? Are you down with it? Well, let's talk about this cancer thing again, okay? Let's talk about this. Because back then, folks didn't worry about cancer so much. They didn't worry about that until the American Cancer Society came along. Now, the American Cancer Society, and somebody can fact check me on this because I'm going through some memory here. I think that started somewhere around, and it was called something else back then, but it started around 1912. Guess who else started funding that? You got it, John D. Rockefeller. So at the same time when petro and oil started moving over into petrochemicals and pharmaceuticals, they started the American Cancer Society. They had already taught our kids to be workers and not thinkers. They didn't want philosophers. They wanted doers. And so now here we are. They've turned a big business not into healing. They've gotten rid of the homeopathic medicine, and they've gotten rid of the healers, and they've got pill pushers and pharmaceutical pushers. So let me give you an example. During World War I, soldiers on both sides of the battlefield were introduced to this horrific new terror. It was a weapon of mass destruction. You remember what it was called? It's called mustard gas. Now, it was a blistering chemical. It didn't just maim bodies. It dismantled the biology at its core. This was chemical warfare. And if you were exposed to mustard gas, you got internal bleeding, blindness, you got burned, you died from it. But amid the human suffering, here's what the scientists figured out, because the scientists always figure out a way to make money off of stuff. They found an observation. The gas, it seemed to suppress white blood cell production. And so it like if you had a rapidly dividing cell in your body, the mustard gas killed it. So now fast forward to the 1940s, you get into we're in World War II. You've got a secretive military experiment going on, and researchers revised this chemical weapon and discovered its potential to target cancer cells, which also divide rapidly. So you've got nitrogen mustard became the basis for the very first chemotherapy drug. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I mean, it's pretty interesting already, but here's where it gets really interesting. It's also unsettling. John D. Rockefeller, who was already one of the most powerful industrialists in history, thanks to Standard Oil, had shifted his focus, as we already said, and sought to monopolize medicine, a whole new industry, and he funded these institutions like the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. And so I've already mentioned the Flexner Report, which completely reshaped medical education to prioritize pharmaceutical-based medicine. And Rockefeller laid the foundation for modern Western medicine's drug-first philosophy. And wouldn't you know it, the chemical companies that produced the war gases, like mustard gas, anybody want to know who? Well, it was IG Farben in Germany, but guess who did it in America? Standard Oil. Who owns Standard Oil? John D. Rockefeller. So they became the predecessors of the pharmaceutical giants we know today. That's right, Standard Oil. They owned the mustard gas. Now they were producing the mustard gas that became the chemotherapy. You want to understand why cancer became such a big thing in our society, in our culture? They've already gotten rid of the healers. They got the pill pushers. So they create the disease, create the cure. They get paid for the cure. But it's not a cure. It's a maintenance plan. See, Rockefeller's financial web was tied to all of those things through banks, through investments, influence. So the very substance that once choked soldiers in the trenches became the cornerstone of a new medical empire, one that Rockefeller quietly helped build, not out of humanitarian concern. No. He didn't do that. He did it out of a calculated interest. And you know what the result was? The world where the same class of chemicals that was used to poison enemies became medicine. And the man who made his billions selling oil ended up steering the future of health. Listen, he replaced natural therapies with patented drugs, reshaping education, and made sure the treatment, not the cure, was always the product. You see, we don't hate them enough, folks. We just don't hate these people enough. And here we are, over a century later, drowning in people who have majored in homosexual dance therapy centered on vegan diets and basket weaving and underwater whatever yoga with student debt. And they got degrees that have, in summary, taught them not how to think, and certainly not why they're not thinking. They're not in there to think. Again, we created an educational system of workers and doers, not thinkers. We got a healthcare system where we manage symptoms, but we ignore the root causes. Big Pharma has replaced Big Oil as the most powerful cartel on the earth. And who sits at the foundation of it all? John Rockefeller. And he didn't just refine oil, he refined the American mind. He distilled it down to compliance. He filtered it through bureaucracy. He bottled it in fear and labeled it, you ready for this word? Progress. Progress. Does that sound familiar these days? So the next time you hear about Rockefeller's contributions to society, I want you to ask yourself this: was it philanthropy or was it a business model? Because I tend to think it was the latter. Was it charity or was it a blueprint for control? Because, friends, history, it might be written by the victors, but truth, that's only unearthed by people like me and you that are vigilant, that are willing to be called conspiracy theorists, okay? Now, before we go any further, and I do want to go further, I'm going to take a sip of my Make Wellness drink. I want you to sign up for it, get under there. You know what? The reason I love this stuff, these peptides, these natural peptides, made in America, by the way, is because I don't want you dependent on Big Pharma. I want you healthy. And peptides work to oxidize, they optimize and maximize the synthesis of protein in your body. That's why I've been using peptides for a couple years. My sister-in-law called me this morning. She said, I don't know your schedule. I can't keep up with you. I said, nobody can keep up with me. Try to keep up with me. You can't keep up with me. You think I just sit here and talk. Nobody can keep up with me. Everybody thinks I got the busiest schedule in the world. I do. You got to keep yourself going, man. Got to keep yourself going. I tell people, I say, you won't. And by the way, anybody that signs up with subscribe and save on my link, I'm going to send you a free Team CP hat, because everybody needs a Team CP hat right there. Let me tell you another thing that'll keep you healthy. You got to put those proteins in your body, and my friends over at Backyard Butchers will help you do that. Backyardbutchers.com/Chad. You got to eat that meat, man. You got to eat the good, fresh beef. It's raised in Texas by Texas ranchers. They don't have a bunch of hormones and chemicals and steroids and garbage pumped into these cows. So what they've got is real beef steers, beef cattle, and you can get it delivered to your door every single month. They got the steakhouse box, backyard box, and on down, something that'll fit your budget. You can get a whole steer, half a steer. They'll send it to you every month for 12 months. And they're locking in the price for now. I think for the next 3 weeks, you can lock in the price so that no matter what the supermarket does with your beef, your price will stay the same with Backyard Butchers for another 12 months. So sign up with them, backyardbutchers.com/Chad. Get on that grill. Eat that beef. We need more protein, man. We need more protein. Backyardbutchers.com/Chad. You still with me, guys? Let me double check. I haven't looked over at the chat. I haven't looked at you. You guys are still with me? You still with me? Give me a thumbs up, something, anything. Give me a yes. I don't care. I'm gonna blow your minds on some more stuff. Some of this is old news to you. Some of it's brand new. Because I want to peel back a final layer of this oily onion, if you will, if I can play on the Standard Oil thing. And I want to talk to you about the power, the secrecy, and the long con that changed the very definition of freedom in America. So you think you're free. You're not free. None of us are free, because I want to talk about Rockefeller some more. Because not only this guy was he invested in the education and now the medicine and the cancer and the pharmaceuticals and the petrochemicals and all of these things, but he was interested in your money, money. His interest in the Federal Reserve, we talk about that all the time. Down with the Fed. Trump keeps talking about, got to fix the Fed, all these. It's one of the most controversial chapters in the history of American finance. And you see, John D. Rockefeller, he wasn't just a man obsessed with oil, medicine, and education. He was obsessed with control. We've already established that, because at the end of the day, this is why I tell you people all the time, I don't care if it's the Pride movement, I don't care if it's the Me Too movement, I don't care if it's BLM, whatever you want to call it, teachers unions, anything. They're never, the trans movement, they're not after equality, they're after control. People, they're not out, no one wants equality. Even the feminists don't want equality. They want control. Rockefeller was all about the control, and he got it. You see, oil was the on-ramp. Control over the industry was control over the medicine, control over the education, and yes, even control over the money itself. That was the ultimate goal, because if you control the money, you control the people. If you control the people, you control shaping the future. And that's why they started the Federal Reserve. See, in the early 1900s, the American people still had somewhat of a decentralized banking system. You ever think about why they fight so hard to keep crypto away from the American people? They don't want that. They want to keep the banks centralized. Back then, we had private banks. We had state banks. We had gold and silver-backed currency. You could literally take a note, a paper note in, and exchange it for silver. You could take those silver notes to the bank, and they would give you pieces of silver for your cash. It was a messy system, don't get me wrong, but it was a free system. And it was a system where the power could still be contested. You could fight it. But see, that was a problem for people like the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan and the Rothschilds because they had interests, and those interests meant that they wanted a central bank where they could influence a private institution masquerading as a federal entity that would dictate interest rates, control credit, print money out of thin air. So guess what? Of course, right around the same time in 1910, under a veil of secrecy darker than a moonless Georgia night, a group of powerful bankers met on Jekyll Island in Georgia, and among them were representatives from the Rockefellers and the Morgan camps, and they wrote up a plan that would later become the Federal Reserve Act. Now, I want you to ask yourself, why the secrecy? Because if the American people knew that the nation's monetary policy was being handed to a cartel of private bankers, they would have revolted, and rightly so. They should have. This wasn't just legislation, this was a financial coup. And Rockefeller was right there behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz pulling the strings. Now, how do we know that? Well, you look at who benefited. After the Fed was created in 1913, Rockefeller controlled the banks, like National City Bank of New York, which is later became Citibank. I mean, what's in your wallet? They became the financial juggernauts, receiving the preferred treatment, access to liquidity, regulatory environment tailored to their benefit. Inflation could be engineered. Credit bubbles inflated, popped on cue. And guess who always came out on top? The ones closest to the printing press. And don't forget, the Fed, it's not a government agency. It's a private bank. It's owned by member banks, many of which they can trace their roots back to Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and influence. That's controversial, right? I mean, doesn't that sort of like make your butthole pucker just a little bit? It should, absolutely, because this means every dollar in your pocket is debt. It's borrowed into existence. There's nothing to back it up. You talk about going and finding the gold in Fort Knox, whether it's there or it's not there. It doesn't matter. The Fed's been in control of that since 1910. They created a system designed to make you dependent. You can't get on top. I don't care how rich you are. You can't get on top. They can push a button, it all disappears. See, what they did with the Fed, it wasn't about stabilizing the economy. It was all about centralizing power. So you had a system designed by the elite for the elite while sold to the public as a necessary reform. And Rockefeller didn't have to be the face of it. He just had to ensure the system was rigged in his favor and that the last remaining dissenters took an icy detour in the North Atlantic. And I'll say more about that in a minute. See, the Federal Reserve, it's not just a bank either. It's a lever. Rockefeller helped build it, not to protect your money, but to control its value, direct its flow, and ensure that those at the top stayed there. And over a century later, we're still living in the house that Rockefeller built. Why do you think we bring you people like American Financing or bring you people like Birch Gold or bring you people that can help protect you? Because you got these folks that you're up against. You're paying rent to the landlords of history, the Rockefellers, the Morgans. All of these folks, and they call you a conspiracy theorist. So call me a conspiracy theorist. Let's go even deeper, shall we? Literally, let's go deeper and talk about the Titanic. Let's talk about the iceberg. It didn't just sink a ship. It conveniently cleared the path for the Rockefeller empire to steam full speed ahead, unchallenged and unstopped, unopposed. Because while school textbooks are going to tell you that the Titanic was a tragic maritime accident, the more curious among us are going to ask, who was on that ship? Well, I'm glad you asked. You know who benefited the most from the people on that ship's absence? Well, let me introduce you to three people, names you already know, stuff you've already talked about, three men who weren't just wealthy, they were powerful. John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. Titans in their own right, but more importantly, they were vocal opponents to the creation of a central banking system, what would soon become the Federal Reserve. Now, I want you to hold that thought. Hold that thought. It's 1912. Boy, a lot of stuff seemed to happen right around 1910, 1911, 1912, and 13. And then don't forget, World War I started in 1914 and through you want to talk about the massive distraction from all of this stuff. They started World War I in 1914, and people just seem to forget this stuff. It's 1912. The richest men in the world are either for or against this proposed idea of a central bank. Now, they got this move. It's heavily backed by J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller's inner circles. The Federal Reserve going to consolidate money and the credit under all the elite control, far more than any oil monopoly ever could. Astor was against it. Guggenheim was against it. Strauss was against it. All three died on the Titanic. All three. Well, it's just a coincidence, right? Well, let me ask you this. Where was J.P. Morgan? Because J.P. Morgan, he financed the building of the Titanic. He owned the thing. He owned it. He had a private suite that was reserved on the ship's maiden voyage. He canceled at the last minute. Had one of those sudden illnesses. Funny, because a couple of days later, he was spotted in perfect health, relaxing at a resort with his mistress in France, surrounded by his art collection. Now, I'm not saying, I would never let YouTube think that I'm saying that the ship was deliberately sunk. But I am saying if you need to remove a handful of powerful obstacles to your economic agenda, that iceberg sure did show up right on time. Because with Astor, Guggenheim, and Strauss gone, the Federal Reserve Act passed the following year in 1913, and with it came the final piece of the puzzle, control of the currency itself. So you see, Rockefeller didn't just want to build an empire. He wanted to ensure that no one else ever could. And while he used oil to buy education and medicine and pharmaceuticals and your body and the banking elite used by the Fed to put a leash on the economy itself, you say, it's all just a coincidence. I mean, we'd look around you right now. Does it look like any of that sounds familiar? Just a coincidence, maybe. But when all the coincidences stack up in favor of one man, one class, and one agenda, eventually you stop believing in coincidences. The Titanic didn't just carry passengers, it carried threats. Threats to a system that was already being carved into stone behind closed doors by men who had everything to gain from a little less competition and a lot more central control. And John D. Rockefeller, he didn't need to be on the ship. He just needed the right people not to get off of it. So welcome to history, folks. That's the version they don't teach you in schools. Now let's bring it up to date and discuss it. Before we do, in the next few minutes, we got a few minutes left. Let's bring on my buddy Party Foul Steve. Ding dong. Let's see. You got your pants on, Steve? There he is. Look how quickly I brought you on there. You were totally not expecting.
I had it muted because I was intensely listening to everything you were saying. But the biggest thing, man, there are no coincidences.
I don't think so.
Not in the mind of a conspiracy theorist. You can't think everything's connected in some weird way. Always happens.
Yeah. I mean, sort of becomes if all those are coincidences, somebody needs to play the lottery.
Yeah, and while I'm listening to you, I was doing some like Google searching and doing some reading on Rockefeller, the early days with the oil companies and stuff. He was sued for monopoly. So his whole oil system was a monopoly. He controlled the railroads. He controlled the equipment that people had to buy, their own refinery. He kept it and wouldn't sell it to them.
Yeah.
It's like, so if they needed their oil transported, they had to use the railroad system. He kept the railroad system tied up and set the times and the schedules and stuff like that to benefit himself.
Well, and we can go even further on that Titanic thing and say that wasn't the Titanic. It was the sister ship. They sailed it under the name Titanic so that J.P. Morgan and the rest of his investors could get a huge insurance. So that, in my opinion, they planned the whole thing. They sped up into the iceberg. They crashed the thing, thought they could get off of there. They were going to kill the right people. They had enough, there were not enough lifeboats. You can go on and on with this thing. And they got a huge insurance payout on that thing under the name of Titanic when it wasn't even the Titanic at all.
Yeah, I've read that before. I don't know about that. How do you know though when you crash a ship into iceberg if it's going to sink or not?
Well, they knew how it was built. Yeah, they knew how it was built. All you have to do, and that's the thing, you scrape the side of that thing because, again, the Titanic, and I don't want to make this all about the Titanic because I could do that for a long time as well. I've done some pretty deep research on the Titanic, but you dot that thing like Morse code down the side of that hull and because it was built so that there were compartment after compartment after compartment. So if one filled, the others didn't. But that thing it hit like the first 4 compartments, so there was no way it was going to sink. It was going to go nose down. So anyway, but that aside, that's a whole other speculation, a whole lot of questions we could ask at a later time.
That all leads to, when he started doing the medical stuff. Mm-hmm. He's got the disease, he has the cure, he has all the components to control what and when, just like he did with the oil company.
Yeah. They did all of this stuff, dude. And again, the cancer thing is what fascinates me as I remember my studies of Rockefeller and those guys, because no one talked about cancer. Like, cancer was not a death sentence. They didn't think about stuff like that. And then World War I happens. They use the mustard gas. They convert that over into a, quote, medicine. They start chemotherapy in the 40s with their research. And cancer suddenly becomes a thing where it's like, if you got an ache or a pain, you better go to the doctor. So now they're pushing visits. They're pushing doctor's visits and ultimately prescriptions and therapies and all of these things. We're still dealing with that crap. It's hard to go to the doctor. You go to the doctor. Now they want to put you on physical therapy for 6 weeks to see if that's going to help fix it or alleviate it. All the while, they're getting paid. So like I said earlier, Rockefeller and his cronies, they set up a system. It was a system that led to more and more control. And I've said, you've heard me say this a million times on a live stage, that Big Pharma, they don't want you dead. They want you dependent.
Well, yeah,
they want you standing in line.
There's no money in cure.
That's the ultimate cure, death. They want you standing in line at the back of the Walgreens. They want you filing those insurance reports, and that's what they want. And so they got us, dude. And people keep on doing it, and they keep on chasing that. And I want us to update that to today. You got a guy who's a billionaire real estate mogul. He's sort of in with the elite crowd, right? His dad gives him $1 million when he's young and basically pats him on the head and says, go out there and make your fortune. And Donald Trump goes out into Manhattan and does exactly that. Now, I've had a lot of people over the years who have said, well, dad made him rich and that's why he became a billionaire. Well, I got a big argument with that, because if you could take $1 million and turn it into $1 billion, that's pretty dadgum impressive. If I gave you $1,000, the same equivalent would be me giving you $1,000 and saying, go turn this into $1 million. Yeah. I can give anybody listening to this thing $1,000. You don't know how to turn it into $1 million. You see what I'm saying? So to give somebody $1 million and they turn it into $1 billion, that's the same math. So you know, $1 million is 1,000 thousands.
Well, then you come out with, you know, even with Trump and his dad, there was some shady stuff that.
Again, they were all his dad, all of them. I can do a study on that too. They were all a part of that world. They were all a part of that world. You can't tell me, here's a guy in New York, here's a guy who, he's not Jewish, he's not Italian, so he's not mob and mafia, right? He's not in that, you know, connected network of people. Here's a white guy. He's a WASP. He's a WASP. White Anglo-Saxon Protestant right here. He's a business guy, and he built the skyline of New York. Now, that is seemingly, you know, I could understand if it's an Italian that did it. I could understand if it was mafia built, if it was union built. He knew how to play all those guys because he was on the inside. He understood that. This would be the equivalent of, in my opinion, not a Rockefeller, but one of these power players back in 1910, in the early 20th century, pulling away and saying, nope, sorry, fellas, I'm not going to play in the club anymore. I'm not going to be a part of the club anymore.
Back then, though, they would have put concrete boots on him and threw him in the East River.
Put him in the river. That's right. He'd have been in the river.
And that's essentially kind of what they're doing.
That's what they're trying to do. That's exactly right. That's what. Did I mention people get a free hat if they sign up for Subscribe and Save with Make Wellness?
Yeah. I saw somebody in the chat say something about there's no money in being healthy and stuff like that. But we have health products that are, you know, like natural kind of things out there that is a money-making industry.
That's why I love it when people say your stuff is too expensive. Well, let me tell you. Bill? Let me tell you, I got a bill downstairs for going and getting a hernia scan, a radiology scan on 2 different hernias, 3 different hernias, incisional and inguinal, if any of you girls want to look at that. It's a cute little lump. $1,700 down there for sitting for 5 minutes in a tube exposing me to God knows what. There it is. There's $1,700. So we can look inside your gut.
Medical radiation.
Yeah. $1,700, sir. So, and nothing's going to be done about it. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'd rather pray about it than put myself in their hands.
But the thing about it is, like, health insurance doesn't pay for the things to keep you healthy. It doesn't pay until you get sick and
They
you have to
want you
go to a
dependent.
doctor, and then the doctor's able to charge for it. Why does our health plan should be to keep us healthy before we get there?
Yeah. I see somebody say, "You got anything for gout?" Oh, I do. And I mean, again, pharmaceuticals, they're going to tell you to take allopurinol every day. They're going to tell you when you have a flare up to take colchicine. Don't take too much of that stuff. You will crap your pants nonstop, and it can kill you. But none of that stuff's good for you. I mean, you got the allopurinol, and trust me, I have gout. You know, I'm crippled with it. My ankles, if I'm not careful with it, it's bad. You take that stuff or whatever, or you know what you can do? You can get you some. You can get you um, some water and stuff that's in this right here. This is the fit. This is the anti-inflammatory that's in this, and you can drink it all day long. It's an anti-inflammatory property with peptides that help synthesize those proteins because you have too much uric acid. You've got too many purines in your diet for whatever reason they may be. I don't know where they're coming from, but you come from somewhere. You've got a purine buildup. It's called uric acid, and it's formed crystals in there. And now your joints don't work right. And so I have people all the time say, "Man, I can't get rid of the gout. Go drink a bunch of cherry juice." You ain't been as crippled as I've been. Steve Powell will tell you he's pushed me through the airport on a wheelchair. He's seen it.
More than once.
More than once. I mean, it's bad. It's been bad. You know what?
I
I've been able to
saw a
manage it.
grown man crying trying to get on a airport
It's
on an
true.
airplane.
For 3 years. For 3 years now, I haven't had a flare up. Every now and then I can tell when it's trying, but for 3 years and I haven't had a flare up because I started doing things like peptides. I started doing different things, stopping certain things that I was consuming and all of that. But I didn't rely on Big Pharma because all they're going to do is manage the pain. All they're going to do is manage the pain. So let me get back to the point on this whole thing though, because that's just symptomatic of the whole deal. You got the germ and you got the terrain, right? You got to fix the terrain, whether that is a financial terrain, educational terrain, a judicial terrain. Because again, what these powers that be, the state, the big deep state, what they want to do, the dark one world government cabal folks, they want to keep injecting germs into our system, whether it's an economic system or a healthcare system or you name it, judicial system. So our judicial system, we got, okay, we're going to believe in truth and justice. Well, let's inject a germ and put one of these radicalized, agenda-driven, paid-off federal judges who's going to do the whole thing. You got a medical system. You're like, okay, we're going to do healers. Well, if they don't do it our way, then we're going to defund them, and we're going to make sure that we inject the germs of COVID in there. And now people are buying into a big vaccine, which isn't even tested, and it's not even a vaccine. So you're going to do all of these things. You're going to do all these things, and at the end of the day, we got to change the terrain. I tell people all the time, I'm like, kids get the flu. People are like, Chad, you never get sick. It's like, I've learned how to gargle with whiskey. I make it so nothing sticks to the terrain, man. I mean, gargle, people laugh at that, but I'm like, guess what? It actually works. Try tequila, try apple cider vinegar. I don't care, but you got to fix the terrain. And so what we had happen here is with the educational system, with the medical system, with the pharmaceutical system, which should have never existed in the way that it does, with the banking system, all of these things. You have these power brokers. If you break away from that like Trump did, you're in essence signing your death warrant. You're pulling a Declaration of Independence. You are signing the bottom line that says, I'm willing to go to the gallows because I believe in the truth and I believe in America more than I believe. That's why it pisses me off when people talk about Donald Trump being sold out. Sold out to what exactly? Now listen, history may prove me wrong. I may get to a point where one day it shows that Donald Trump was some mole. He was like some Manchurian candidate that maybe Israel put in place or something like that so they could. I don't see that. I just don't see that. I see a guy who risked it all, lost a ton, has been through hell and back, all because these people who want to protect this type of history we just exposed from 125 years ago. Or 115 years ago, these people still exist. These deep state, true enemies of America, freedom, health, and life, they still. Life, liberty, property, those were the three principles of freedom founded by John Locke. What do? They want to tax your property. They want to steal your life. They want to put limitations on your liberty. And tell me that ain't happening right here in this country because these people, they're not after solutions. They're after control. And the same goes true when a guy like Pete Hegseth walks into the American military industrial complex and says, okay, we're going to reform this. We're going to change this. We're not going to let the bureaucrats and the ass kissers, and the bootlickers and the sycophants take over and have control. We're not going to let those people do it anymore. We're going to expose the corrupt. We're going to expose the fraud. We're going to expose the waste. We're going to expose the trash and all the spending, and we're going to try to reel this stuff in. They're scared to death at what he might get to the bottom of in regards to that.
I hope he gets to the bottom of all of it.
All of it.
Get rid of all the woke. Get our warriors back in fighting
Shape.
shape.
Yep.
Basically.
So I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat a little bit. This is the deal. Like, this is not a new thing. This is not a new thing. Not a new thing. You, how do you get Chad's Make Wellness? If you go to watchchad.com right there on my homepage, right there at the bottom of the header at the top, you'll see me, my pretty face. It says Make Wellness. You'll see it. Click on it. You can become affiliate. You can look at the products. You're going to go, that's expensive. Look at the individual products. I'm telling you, get all of them. Take all of them. I get up every day. This is my regimen. And this is not some big, long sales pitch. It's really not. I'm doing pretty good with this.
It's been virtually life-changing the last 2 months.
You've heard me promote a lot of stuff, right, Steve? Over the years, you've heard me promote a lot of stuff. Have you ever heard me talk about a product the way I've talked about this?
No.
In the last 3 weeks of my life. Because it's made me feel better than I have in the last 2 years. Insane, dude. Insane.
I bought it all too.
You bought it too?
Right now.
I got people that have lost weight. I got people that have lost weight. People are like, you don't need a pill to lose weight. This doesn't make you lose weight. That optimizes the mindset and what your body does naturally. It optimizes it so it does it better. Like, there's no magic pill.
No, there's not a magic pill. There's not a magic thing, but it does help guide you. And I always say, first thing you start cutting the sugar, and then
sugar's a cancer causer. Sugar's
Mm-hmm.
a cancer causer. You know what they've told you? They've said cut out the salt, and we eat more sugar. We eat more. For instance, we eat more breads. The bread synthesizes into sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, the food pyramid forever controlled by the deep state, controlled by big pharma, controlled by the FDA, controlled by the powers that be out there. They put bread at the bottom of the pyramid. Bread turns into sugar. Sugar causes cancer. Sugar eats your cells. I'm not a doctor. Well, not that kind of doctor, but it eats your cells. And they say salt's bad. You know what I drink? I drink salt in everything I drink. I want to drink it. You know why? Because your body needs it. Because your body's depleting these electrolytes every day. If you exert yourself at all, you're going to go, well, I'm going to go work out. Okay, were you putting electrolytes back in there? Well, I'm going to drink Gatorade. Gatorade's full of sugar. Artificial enhancers and sweeteners. I mean, my addiction, Coke Zero. I'll tell you right now, phenylketonuria and phenylalanine are neurotoxins. They cause brain cancer. It's literally ant poisoning. And I'm drinking it. I'm addicted to it. I love it. I want it. But this has replaced that. Every now and then, I ain't gonna lie to you, you might see me drink a Diet Coke. You might. I grew up on Diet Coke. My father was a diabetic. We didn't have Coke in the house. We didn't have Coke in the house, and they had the nastiest ass tea you've ever seen in your life.
That's my one thing that's hard to pass up is sweet tea.
I understand. But see, my mom made lemon flavored unsweetened tea, and it was gross. So I drink Diet Coke because that's what we had in the house. You see this. This is CNN, Trump administration announcing plan to remove artificial food dyes from the U.S. food supply. They should.
Should have never been in there.
Should have never been in there.
It's sad that other countries are so far ahead of us on keeping the crap out of our food. That's why we're so obese.
Yeah,
you remember, a country.
You remember that?
And I'm not hating on fat people because I could very easily, be in the same shape. I just have.
Yeah,
I make a constant daily decision not to do it.
Yeah, look at that. What is that autism deal? They said this is the worst day ever. I said it this morning on Dear America. I don't know if you guys caught it. I said, but I'm not going to sit there and choose to believe that autism just popped up in our kids in the last 30 or 40 years on an exponential level the way that it did, and we're not going to blame something.
The thing about I think autism's always been around, but it's the degree of that 20% that is shit their pants.
Yeah,
I don't know how to say it, but I mean just you know what I mean.
Now all of us are on a spectrum.
Yeah, I believe it.
All of us are.
And don't get me wrong, autism has created some great minds in this world.
Sure, but it's there. And I can't wait for that Accountant Number 2 to come out. The Ben Affleck movie. I'm going to go see that movie. The first Accountant movie, fantastic. I can't wait to watch number 2. Comes out Friday. I don't care if it is Ben Affleck. I'm going to see it. But you look at the trends that are right here. Going back to 1997, you got 1.9 per 1,000 children. And then it goes on up. Look at 2022. 1 in 31 children. 2020, you had 1 in 36 children. It's increasing, dude. It's constant. It's getting bigger and bigger. You can't tell me that you don't blame that on something.
I don't think there's one thing that you can pinpoint it solely on. I'm not going to say it's on vaccines, it's on our food. I think it's a combination of
I agree.
many things.
It's
All the genetically modified foods that we're putting in our body, eventually, somewhere down the line, that we're going to become genetically modified.
Look at the
Not-
retards on the right. I mean, on the left. That was a
This
bad
all
Freudian
happened about
deal.
this.
We
That
got
all
our
happened.
level of retards on the right too, but look at the retards on the left.
That
These
all
people-
started happening about the time they started milking almonds. Like,
Started getting the milk out of a soybean.
yeah, it's like, man, why do you got to go to? That's ridiculous.
I'm just saying. There's and you know who's sitting in the back of it? It's the raw. David, I love you. I see you in the background. You never go full retard, man. You never go full. I mean, the fact that people want to censor the word retard because they're easily offended by it, that's retarded. I mean, all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's deep state. Deep state wants to control the language. They want to because if you control the language, you control the culture, you control the society. If you can define the words, you define the society. So they start making words off limits. What we were saying the other day, we were talking about. I won't get into that deal. We were talking to a guy who was. I will get into it. We were talking to a guy who books comedy, and Jesse Payton. And Jesse Payton, he does the right side of comedy with me, but Jesse's not like a great conservative spokesperson, right? Like
Right.
he's like a conservative neophyte. He knows what he believes for the most part, but also he doesn't know why necessarily, because that's just not his gig. That's not his deal. And so like he made the comment about conservatives being racist. I said conservatives aren't racist. The left is racist. They are the progenitors of slavery, Jim Crow, KKK, civil rights atrocities, all the things that went on. That was, the desegregation of schools, and then, coloreds going in the back door and using a different fountain and sitting in a different place in the theater. That was all driven by Southern Democrats. So it was the Democrat thing. And I said, today, I said, the issue that we have is you say, oh, well, the people on the right, they might use certain words or advocate for certain words. I said, but see, that's not racism. That's advocation for free speech, because words don't hurt us. Like what we're saying is, can we get off of this idea that words are going to break our bones and not sticks and stones? So again, I'm not advocating for slurs or anything else. I'm just saying we're free speech defenders, and at the end of the day, you're going to have people who are going to misconstrue like what I just said and say, oh, you must be a racist. No, we're not. We just believe in the First Amendment, and we believe in expressing ourselves so the ideas that are in our brains can get translated through human language, out my tongue, through my face hole, into your ear holes, and you can translate it the way you want to in your own brain. That's where we live. That's where we should live. That should be okay. But now people hear things like, you can't say that. Yeah, I can. That's a deep state philosophy that says I can't. There it is. A tank is full.
Retard.
You should be. See, it's the deep state controlling the words you say. It's the deep state. It's the Rockefellers, if you will. It's the J.P. Morgans telling you how you can spend your money. Explain to me why we have a duopoly between Visa and MasterCard. They control all of the business. They control all of the business when it comes to credit cards.
Credit card interest rates running about 29.5%,
That's
if
why-
not a little more in some cases.
That's why Congress needs to pass the CCCA, the Credit Card Competition Act, and they need to push that through. That was something that J.D. Vance was actually working on when he was in the Senate, so that others can come along, and it forces them with a free market to truly control what those interest rates are. And credit card swipe fees. They swiped $187 billion in the last year. $187 billion just in swipe fees, bro.
Yeah, they're charging whoever the business is that's taking the credit card, they're charging them a fee, and then they're putting those fees on you. They're making money on all sides of it.
Yeah, 100%.
But if
Coming and
you'll
going.
notice that's going to be the Democrats. They're going to try to take that as their idea, they're already doing it. And AOC and Bernie Sanders, they've been talking about the whole thing. All of a sudden, start talking about the credit cards and
But see, this is
putting a
why.
cap.
This is why AOC and them. They put AOC as a champion for the Green New Deal because she's stupid. And so they tried to make it look like it was AOC's big idea, the Green New Deal. It looked like something that a fifth grader drew up with a crayon, okay? It was stupid because it says, how are you going to do an infrastructure overhaul that's going to cost us $100 trillion in this America? In America. That means you're going to have to rebuild every building. Everything's going to be retrofitted with solar panels, everything else. And we're like, we can't afford that. But with modern monetary theory, which again is something that is controlled by the deep state, you can do that because they are already printing cash out of thin air. Every dollar bill that's in your pocket is a note of debt. It's not a note of anything of value. And so they can do that because in modern monetary theory, in the New World Order, the World Economic Forum believes that debts and deficits are actually good things. And the more you have, the better off you are. So that's when they started implementing things like not only a credit score, but they started doing a social credit score. So now you are being judged based on the things you said, like we just said, full retard. Now we got a knock against our credit score. So I had to call this debtor, this debt collector on the phone from something from an ex-wife from 1,000,000 years ago that I didn't know existed that was $100 they were trying to collect. And I had to make sure that that's not going to be reflected on my credit score, which I shouldn't even have to care about, which, by the way, isn't government owned, but it's still part of the deep state. I had to make sure it wasn't going to reflect that $108 on my credit score for the next 7 effing years.
The problem happens when you actually, if it's already went to and I might be wrong, I don't want to say that, but I think once it goes to a debt collector, and then it doesn't go on your thing until you pay it, and then it shows that you paid.
Then
something
it shows up, so you got to go behind them, and you got to make sure that it doesn't, because they're a bunch of thieves. And let me tell you what they do. See, that thing showed up as something that popped up 7 months ago because we dealt with that a long time ago with a credit fix guy person, whatever. We fixed that a long time ago, but those criminals went back and found that debt, and they put it back in, and it looked like it popped up back in August. This is something that goes back years.
Yeah.
Criminals. It's deep state. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. That's the point. So when you look at the headlines and you go, oh, something was leaked because of Pete Hegseth, it's manipulated, dude. You think the CIA isn't bought off? You think the FBI isn't bought off? You think that the NSA isn't bought off? Of course they are. They're controlled by deep state puppets. They do what they're told to do. Where the hell is Lisa Page and Peter Strzok? They said they were going to fix that election thing, and they did. Where are they at? Why aren't they being held accountable? I haven't seen that dude in years, that little smarmy punk ass. Yeah. Where's Peter Strzok at?
Sitting
he
on
needs to be under
somewhere.
the jail. So here we are. You can take it all the way back. You can go back and watch it. For those of you who missed, you go back and watch it. It starts with people like the Rockefellers. It goes all the way back. Goes all the way back. Don't even get me started about the Freemasons. There's a reason why there's a reason why the Washington Monument is an obelisk in the shape of a pyramided phallic symbol. I'm just gonna say. You go back and look at all this stuff. I don't give a rat's ass who it pisses off either. Come at me. You better know your history. You come to me. You better know what you're talking about.
You piss off the Catholics yesterday. You piss off the Masons today. Who's next?
Piss off the Catholics. They just don't believe in the Pope.
Oh.
But they will. They do get pissed off. I don't care. Why do people text me that stuff?
It's all good.
Let's go to a baseball game, Steve.
Let's do it.
See the hot dog.
$2 hot dog.
It's Tuesday night. It's $2 hot dog night. Let's go see the Astros, see if they can lose one to the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
So what do we do with all this information, folks? Let me wrap it up in a bow for you. Well, you could put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye, but let's not do that, okay? Let's don't hang out a shingle that says we're going out of business. Let's don't do that. Let's work smarter. We got to work hard, but let's work smarter too, okay? Let's realize, first of all, that they're out there. And let's don't believe every mainstream media headline that comes across your board because, again, that is controlled by the deep state. Let's ask questions. Remember the Prather rule. The first key to critical thinking is, where am I wrong? So when you start to believe certain things, whether it's a conspiracy or it's a theory just in and of itself, or you hear something about someone and you're like, Pete Hegseth needs to resign. Stop and think, where am I wrong? Striker J, we're going to the Astros. We're going down there to Minute Maid Park Tuesday night, $2 hot dogs. That's right. But ask yourself where you're wrong. That's the first step, in my opinion, of critical thinking. That's the Prather rule. Bongino's got rules. I can have rules too. The first rule of the Chad Prather Show is Chad's never wrong.
I've only got one rule.
What is your one rule?
Don't do anything illegal while you're doing something illegal. Right.
Or, as my lawyer says, just because you did it don't mean you're guilty. explore history, folks, not from the perspective of the history books, because again, as I said earlier, the victors, they might be the ones who write the history, but at the end of the day, you got to chip away. As I said, you got to chip away from that stuff, because you got to look at who it is that wins off of telling that history in that way. You got to figure out who wins, who gets control if history continues to be told in that manner. Okay. And history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes with itself. And so when you start to see that repetition and that rhythm of history, you can start seeing the same things happening over and over again. So when we see the attacks that come against Trump, we see the attacks that come against the Hegseth and Elon Musk or whoever else. And I'll be careful too. I've said this over and over about guys like Elon Musk. Always be wary of the guy who continually inserts himself in every story in current history. That has always made me a very wary person when it comes to Elon Musk. Don't personally have anything against the guy. I'm not for the brain chips or the transhumanism. Not for any of that stuff. I like some of the useful things that he's done, but always be wary of the dude, especially the richest guy in the world, JP Morgan and John D. Rockefeller. Always be careful when the richest dude in the world inserts himself in the middle of current history.
I don't like anybody to insert anything around me.
Oh boy, I think we got some super chats.
What? So super chat, we had one yesterday. Where's all that? Where's that $5 going, Chad?
To me,
I can
hope.
buy
I
two
don't
hot
know.
dogs.
Yeah, we buy a couple hot dogs. We could buy 2 hot dogs with that. I thought that was a pretty good little history lesson I
Oh,
gave y'all today.
You
All
did.
right.
You did.
H Code 414, people say that make is expensive because they're not used to a medical card for it. They can't use a medical card for it. You have to pay out of pocket. I love the show. Keep it up. I agree.
But that goes about exactly what I was saying, though. We're not able to use stuff like that for things that keep us healthy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. There's a number of people who are on my team where I've bought stuff for them. I've said I believe in this so much, and I think this can help you. You got to remember, I'm a guy who has I've had my history of antidepressants over the years. And I would never, let me just stop right there. Let me give a disclaimer. I would never tell you what to do when it comes to depression or anything like that. It's a serious deal. It's a serious deal. I've talked about it. Talk with God, talk with your therapist, talk with your doctor. Deal with that the right way.
Our
But I
country's
will-
over medicated, though.
They
on
are
everything.
over medicated. I was on antidepressants beginning in 2009. After a few years, they absolutely tormented me. It was hard for me to get off of them. I got off of them. And then a couple of years ago, I went back into a very light one just to try to help balance things out. The whole deal started all over again. And let me just tell you, I'm in a better frame of mind of positivity than I've been in the last 2 years right now today. I'm not saying it's because of Make Wellness. I'm just telling you, I feel damn good. And so I know some people out there that I've said, you know what, I will buy this and I'll send it to you. So, Melee81, thank you, Chad, for this conversation. I've shared about my 12-year-old son who was misdiagnosed 11 years ago. Big Pharma and the doctors in their pocket have caused permanent damage. I'm so sorry. The system is broken. Yes, it is. I am sorry to read that.
No, it's only going to get worse too. As we're turning out doctors that that are, you can say DEI. They're just they lower the standards so people become doctors. You know what they call that guy that graduates last in his doctorate program?
Doctor.
Doctor.
Still a doctor.
Yeah.
I know a guy. He's gone now. He got hit by a van. But he was a doctor. He was my dad's doctor, actually. He wasn't a great one, but he was a super smart guy. He went to medical school down in like Chihuahua, down in Mexico. He had to take 4 levels of Spanish all at once. His final year of college, aced them all, but he had to learn Spanish so he could go to medical school in Mexico. They called him doctor, and he was a doctor. But anyway, all right. What else we got? Anything else? No.
Good.
That's it.
That's it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. What is it? It's right at 2:00 Central Time. We'll go to a ball game, Steve. I got tickets. I got good tickets. You know why I got good tickets?
Because
Of your wife. Let me just solve that mystery. Because your wife deserves everything, son.
that's for
She
sure.
puts up with your grumpy ass all the time, and you got a project going on there at the house, and I'm rescuing your wife. You just get to go, okay?
Okay. Yeah. Hey, project is practically complete.
It's a therapeutic thing for you. When you get a project going, you're on it. I appreciate that. That's why that studio is there the way it is. I appreciate the Chad Prather Show family. Oh, MX Wife 859. Will this help with high BP? Looking at the site and want more info. Type 1 diabetic. Again, I'm not going to give you medical advice. I will tell you that I historically take a lisinopril with hydrochlorothiazide, which helps level out my blood pressure. The biggest thing that has helped me in terms of that and regulating things is drinking more of the water and the anti-inflammatories, and those peptides will help optimize and synthesize. You need to monitor that very closely and just see what it does. I can't say because I know some people who have taken the lean and it takes, and then some people it doesn't take. They say that on average with most people, like the lean will help you eat 600 calories a day less. That's what they've measured. That's not going to be true for everybody. But see, Ozempic and all that crap doesn't work for everybody either.
No, but there has to be. I mean, this kind of helps you. It's a guide, a guide to help you get a new mindset, because there is a lot of it to do with mindset. And
Yeah, because I told CJ called earlier and she goes, "Man, you really are doing great with the peptides." I said, "Because I've taken injectable peptides for a long time, but those are synthetics, rebuilding tissue and things like that. These are oral, or you drink them." And she said, "I guess I didn't." She said, "I really need to stick with these." And I was like, "You got to stick with them because this is not a supplement. It's a peptide. It takes a while to get in your system." But again, I'm not here to sell you that stuff. I want you to get on board, and I hope it helps you. And if it doesn't, you know what? We can remain friends, and you can say it didn't work for me. That's okay. But I want us to all get unplugged from the deep state. All the crap, I mean, we're told. I mean, they shouldn't have advertisements for big pharma on television.
No, man, you go into the doctor's office and you're able to tell your doctor what you need.
Right.
And they just go ahead and, because they getting pushed from that side, they just go ahead and write it out.
You remember when I had that fistula between my intestine and my bladder? Remember that? The stuff in your intestines is not supposed to go into your bladder. I'll just leave it at that, okay? Yeah. And I had a hole because I had diverticulitis, and it had eaten itself into there, and it wound up them cutting my guts out back in 2018. I went to my urologist, the same guy that did my vasectomy. This is TMI, and I don't care. But I went in there, and he said, "What's going on with you?" He said, your vasectomy still works, right? And I was like, "Yeah, that's great." I said, "But I have a fistula." And he goes, "Somebody's been on the internet." And I said, "Well, I hate to say it, but we can go in there and do a cystoscopy where they run a camera down your pee hole, and you could take a look, and I guarantee you I'm right." We went in there, and you see stuff moving around. He goes, "Yep, there's not supposed to be airflow in that." And so 5 days later, I was under the knife with Dr. Ciadotti up in Fort Worth, cutting 12 inches of my gut out. So there we are. But you know what? I'm not somebody that panics or worries, but when you're pooping out your pee hole, you got a problem. And I'll leave it at that. I'm just saying. And
if a guy ever tells you, "Hey, come here and look in the urinal,"
like, do you ever have sediment like this when you pee? Yeah. Remember that? Remember I did that?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
All too well.
That's a problem. I got the scars to prove it, folks. So I'm just telling you, I want to get you guys away from all that. That's my life. And financially, I want people to get away from that. In terms of, like, that's why when I ran for governor, people are like, "You, it was a joke you ran for governor." No, we fought, and we're still fighting. That's why I support Don Huffines for comptroller here in Texas. I support so many of these politicians who are fighting against property tax. We have the worst property tax in the country here in our metropolitan areas, and outside of that, in our rural areas, even we have the 6th worst in the country. It's bad.
We got to have the dose in our, in our state level government.
Let me tell you what Good Trent just said. It took $5 to say it. He said, "Doesn't increase the size of any specific body parts, asking for a friend."
Let me tell you, with a little bit of weight loss, because we're all probably carrying an extra few pounds, things tend to.
Things may look larger than they appear in the mirror. Please read this as an anonymous comment. Oh, sorry, Trent. I'm just saying, you feel better. You feel better. And you look better, too. Run around naked. All right, let's get out of here. David, he's still healing up, but he'll be back with us. I'm going to have Abby Johnson on the show tomorrow. We got a pro-life bill here in the State House here in Texas. We're going to talk about that because it's pretty controversial what's going on. So my good friend, you've seen the movie Unplanned. That was a movie about her life. She was on not too long ago, but I want to get her back for an update. I talked to her today, and I said, we need to talk about this thing. So I'm going to get Abby Johnson on the show tomorrow, Lord willing. And then my buddy Bryce Eddy's going to come on from TP USA. He's going to come on Monday. So we got a lot of stuff coming up, some big conversations that are going to be had. And if you liked this sort of little history lesson that we did, this little reminder of diving into some of the conspiracies, you let me know because I can do this stuff all day long. You just let me know if you like it. Make sure you hit like. The thumbs up before you get out of here. Make sure you're subscribed to the Chad Prather Rumble channel. You can run over there and do the same over on YouTube if you want to do that. And also,
oh look, there's a thumbs down. I mean, never mind.
You bastard. Do jump on where podcasts are offered, like over on Apple Podcasts, and go give me a 5-star rating and review. Party Foul Steve, you can follow him on Venmo at Party Foul Steve. He likes
a month.
Subscribe to his services. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being a part of the Chad Prather Show. Thank you for being a part of the Dear America family. TikTok, we got some big announcements that are coming, and I mean some big ones. So, going to be some good stuff. TikTok. All right, Party Foul Steve, let's go to a ball game. You get your wife dressed, and y'all do whatever y'all are going to do, and then get your butts on down here. I'm going to be the third wheel. I'm paying for the date, but I'm going to be the third wheel between you guys, okay?
All right. I will pick you up somebody at the ball game.
No, I'm good.
Astros fan.
I'm going to eat a $2 hot dog.
All
and
right.
think of Trent. I love you guys. Hey, y'all tune in for Todd's show here in a little bit. He comes on at 3. And then also jump on with Maggie Moo this evening. Brianna Morello, she texted me this morning and she said, you guys are sexist and misogynist because it's a bunch of ugly dudes on Dear America. And I said, that's the way we like it, Brianna. And she goes, that's actually true. I like it when men run things. And I said, but don't I look good? She said, you're the best looking one on the panel right now. And I said, that ain't saying much between Tony and Todd and me. She said, that's my point. So I might have to get Brianna on the Dear America show one morning here coming up soon, maybe the next day or two. I love you guys. For my buddy David at David Medina PDX, go follow him on Instagram. Keep up with his content. He's rocking and rolling. Pray for my boy David because he's a little under the weather. And I don't know, he's got the pertussis or something like that. But we'll see y'all in the morning. I love you. God bless you. Take care of yourselves. Bye.